Y'all, welcome back to Kentucky Fried Wargaming, where two guys who aren't qualified to talk about anything decide to talk about a game with hard math and chance. I'm Joe.
And I'm John.
And on this episode, we're coming to you with a topic that is, at first I thought not wargame important, and then I thought, maybe it's kind of wargame adjacent. And then after having an interaction with somebody, I think is now wargame important and worth chatting about in our community specifically. And that is the idea of hot button issues in the hobby. And, things that happen that you see spread around like wildfire on YouTube and forums and Facebook and, wherever else you like to do your tweeters. These things that really rile people up and oftentimes, very rightly so. But specifically, why we need to be a little careful about how we react to our community members when talking about these hot button topics. And of course, we are going to pull a recent hot button topic in another hobby adjacent area from Dungeons and Dragons, which I will not be spicy about, but I feel strongly about, and use that as an example to kind of set the tone and walk you through why we think that maybe we as a community could do better when talking about some of these things. Because, having discourse and discussion with your fellow community members is good. Usually. I mean,
are we going to fight on Twitter? Let's fight on Twitter.
John, no, do not fight on Twitter. Do not fight in Facebook comment section. No one ever listens. You're not going to make a change to anybody in a Facebook comment thread.
No.
Even if you just get a couple of likes, it's really not going to validate anything at the end of the day.
But what about my hobby progress?
I mean, okay, we talk about that as long as you talk about games played.
Alright, let's go.
Alright, John. You brought it up. You start.
Alright, can do. Games played and hobby progress. Hobby progress. I continued working on Slaves of Darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I accidentally have 2,000 points of Slaves of Darkness because it's an elite army that I can just bring a bunch of Chaos Knights, which are impeccable sculpts. Joseph is a terrible influence, and
I'm a wonderful influence, and you are welcome for my existence. You're welcome for my service.
Thank you. Every unit is like a minimum of 200 something points, so it's very easy to just accidentally have a whole force. And because I got the Slaves of Darkness box set for Christmas, the one with the book and the War Scrolls and everything, it was a huge step up. So I have a ton of stuff to work through, and that was before the range got fully released, and I actually kind of really like that Vanguard box, so I might end up picking that up in the future. Because I think Slaves of Darkness is a faction I'm genuinely going to stick with. Hits a lot of the same notes of when I was younger, and it's just fun. I haven't even really played the faction, and I'm just having a blast painting them. And I'm just happy that I have them, which I think is a really good place to be in with, playing and hobbying and yada yada. Especially with some of these games that are just harder to get games in. But what isn't hard to get games in is A Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh, God, it's so easy to play. It's eminently playable.
And I played against Tanner's Baratheons with Stannis, with my Greyjoys, and had a absolute blast. We had a knockdown, drag out, Battle of the Past style fight where we played on a smaller board because we didn't really feel like pulling out the big, the full table. I had thrown my pack out, so it was kind of hard to move around too much. So we just played on a smaller table with this narrative of he's beaten me for 3 games in a row, something like that, 2-3 games in a row. And I've been this forced retreat, this fighting retreat into this pass. And now the Baratheons have chased me in here, and we're having this stand fight where we fight, deal with this problem, and eked out a pretty substantial win for the Greyjoys. I was very proud of myself. I haven't won a game of Greyjoys yet, and it was very good to figure the faction out, per se.
Yeah, it's a hard faction, and it's a hard faction that is slightly undertuned. So like
Yes.
it's a double uphill fight.
And soon we're going to have another game where it is going to be okay. We have gotten past the pass fight, and we're doing another open field fight, and that'll be a lot of fun. Kind of hoping that we get new cards for Song of Ice and Fire soon, because I would love to be able to play more like list building game on the toilet, like I do with the Song of Ice and Fire. But yeah, it's amazing. We've done some episodes here about A Song of Ice and Fire, and if you haven't listened to them, you should.
Some?
Yeah, we're
Some?
probably gonna be doing more because it's an amazing game, and like I want to keep playing it. And I got Star Wars Legion stuff because I'm going to join Joe in the simulations and play clones.
Yes, brothers in arms. This is the first time John and I ever play the same faction.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing.
Like we are certainly closest of close buds, but our faction tastes are diametrically opposed in every game system, I feel like. This is the one time where the stars aligned and John went, "Oh god. You know, I kind of like tragic boys with guns too."
Well, like we have a Venn diagram, and in that center is sad boy, right? We have that sad boy center, and then you have a more wholesome like, let's enjoy like cardigans and nice things on the other end, on one end, and on the other end it's like I'm gonna drink half a bottle of whiskey and smoke half a pack of cigarettes in my like studded out jean jacket and just listen to real loud music and fist fight like I don't know some asshole in a bar. Like there's a level of edge on my side that is slowly getting worn away by Joseph's soft cardiganness.
Join us, John. It's very comfortable.
Yeah, I know. I put on fuzzy socks the other day. It changed my fucking life.
I'm telling you, dude, you put on wigwams, it's game over for the day. Oh, it's so lovely. Yeah, I'll give you hope for the future eventually. I'll wear you down. By God, I won't have faith in a higher being, but we will have faith in humanity, and you will have that. Just give it time.
How dare you?
You're welcome for my service.
Well, tell me what you've done this week with hobby.
Well,
That'll be your service.
First, I, as I do every week, basked in the glowing knowledge that I was right and John would love Slaves to Darkness. You're welcome. But also, I have been continuing the hobby progress. Like every time I pull up Discord, it is still in that mode where like 70% of the people I hang with are all playing World of Warcraft, and the other like 30 are playing Hunt Showdown together in a locked threes channel. So, like, I'm just left to myself, and I've taken that time to get some hobby done. Specifically, I've dove in on characters. As I mentioned in the last podcast, I have been painting the hell out of my Star Wars Legion stuff, and I would call it a backlog, but it wasn't a lot to begin with, if I'm being totally honest. I had like the starter box and then just a couple of extra units, but I mean, still, I feel immensely proud that it is almost done. Almost done. So this week I've been pushing to try to finish it entirely. So I got to paint my favorite character in Star Wars lore, and that is Captain Rex. And God, I cannot tell you how glad I am now that it's done, but how stressful it was while painting it. That I put it on Instagram if folks want to see it, but this is my first project where I've really done freehand. And Rex's helmet is one, very tiny, but two, has these sort of like battle painted markings on there that are stylized, and it makes him stand out amongst some of the other clones. But trying to paint those like delicate, swishy shapes, it was nerve-wracking. I had to break out like my tiniest brush, my like Squidmar like little ittle bittle brush, and gently got it done. But man, I'm so glad with how he looks, and I even got to play him on the tabletop, which I'll talk about in a minute. But after I got him done over a couple of nights, I broke out Obi-Wan Kenobi, because like if you're getting a lot of progress done, why slow down? So I've got Obi-Wan Kenobi. I got him primed, zenithalled, got his robes done, painted his under carapace, got the armor blended and ready to go. Got his hair wet blended, as well as his skin tones and face highlights and beard. So now it is ready for streaking grime, and then well, I can't say it's fully ready. On his left pauldron, he has a Republic marking that I'm going to have to freehand. So that's got to be done. But after I do that quick little freehand on his left pauldron, then he's ready for wash and lightsaber, and he will be done. So he's like 80% of the way there.
And then what's your next Star Wars Legion thing? Like, I know there's more you're planning on getting. What's it going to be?
The only thing I have in my house to paint for Star Wars left is Yoda. I pulled him out of a box this week and built him, but he isn't primed or painted or anything. So, if I knock Obi-Wan Kenobi out in the next few days, I might just dive into Yoda and paint him up.
Having a Star War over there.
I love Star Wars. It's a great vibe. So yeah, I'm just killing it. I did order another unit of Phase 1 clone troopers so I can start pushing towards an 800 point like tournament standard list level. You got to have 3 battle line. I only own 2. So, trying to get
Phase
there.
1 or 2 troopers.
Huh?
Are you going to go for Phase 1 or Phase 2 troopers?
Phase 1s. They're cheaper, and I think they do the job fairly well. And,
Nice.
I find when I'm building clone lists, oftentimes, I'm like, damn, I need, 10 points. And I can get, 30 extra points off of bringing Phase 1s instead of Phase 2s. So, I'm happy with that. But I'm waiting on them to get here before I can build and paint them. I just ordered them, so hopefully in a couple of weeks I'll have them. But after those guys are painted, I think I'm going to maybe if I have every single model painted, I might treat myself to a tank. To the floating hover tank.
It is a glorious model. I love it. It reminds me of that Clone Wars GameCube game.
Yeah, it throws me back to original Battlefront. It just so good. And also you could make Plo Koon pilot it, which is amazing. God, the second favorite Star Wars character is Plo Koon. So if I could put Rex on the table and then put Plo Koon in the tank next to Rex, oh, what a time. So I'm genuinely excited. I also played some games. My wife and I threw down. She's wanting to learn she wants to make a concerted push to try to learn Star Wars Legion. So we're playing once a week. And we played a game where I took all of my clones, led by Captain Rex, and threw them up against her rebels with a bunch of Mandalorian warriors and Sabine Wren and Jyn Erso, as well as some that ate a lot of points, but just regular foot troops. And it ended up being a pretty dominant victory for the clones. She made the mistake of making a list that is very, very elite at 500 points, which left her kind of down on activations and board presence. And I think that got her. She certainly had more straight up punch with that one unit of all super kitted out Mandalorians. But Rex had enough punch to help while also giving out a bunch of aim tokens to the other clones to make them punch above their weight class. And in the end, it just overwhelming fire got her. But it was a really good game. And she immediately made a new list for us to play again. And as I'm recording, that game is going on downstairs. We got the board set up and got all the cards set up and all the units deployed, but ran out of time yesterday to actually start playing. So that's on the list. Oh, and also, John's a bastard man because he wants me to play a new faction for a Song of Ice and Fire. So I've done some research there. I'm going to count that as hobby time for the Martells.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, I'm a piece of shit, and I want you to beat the shit out of me with like spear desert dudes.
Guerrilla fighting desert warriors.
Yeah, so for those of you who haven't known Joseph for years, like I have, this man loves spears.
I do.
I've watched this man fight other people in an open field with a spear more times than I can honestly count. And that I need you. You have your gambeson dudes, right? You love gambesons. You have your gambeson night watch. You need the spear dudes. They're all spears.
It's true. It's
And
true.
your wife loves Pedro Pascal. Like,
Let's be honest. That's like by Panic the faction. There's a lot to love going on over there.
yeah.
Yeah. I will admit, the moment I mentioned Martell's existed, my wife did go, "Show me Oberyn's model." I mean, he's a
Show me
handsome
the
lad.
model.
It's a handsome lad, but it's not Pedro Pascal. She's disappointed. But yeah, Martells do seem cool, especially now that they've got some other unit options. When it was just the starter box, obviously it's going to be a little rough because they don't have any options. But you know, now that they've come out with like 3 or 4 new boxes as well as the new Heroes upgrade box, I might pull the trigger on that. But then that means we got to play more Song of Ice and Fire.
Oh no.
Oh
We gotta play more
no!
games.
What a shame! And then we'd have to make a faction focus on them. Oh no! Shame. I don't know. We'll see if I buy them or not, but if I don't, I know it's going to be a spicy topic. And speaking of which, let's get on to the topic. All right, John. So I feel like it is not like I want to make a disclaimer at the front of this that I really think the point of this is how we interact with each other as a community. However, there's been a huge event going on in the Dungeons and Dragons world, which is, you know, hobby adjacent. It's tabletop. It's not a war game, but it's a miniatures game, doing battles and stuff. There's been colossal news and shakeups over there. It is hot, like not just hot. It is molten lava over there, and I think it makes a good touch point example that is relevant to us that I can quickly describe and immediately show. And we'll also mention some others that have happened, some of which are in our own tabletop wargaming sphere. But I think that this is worth talking about and springboarding into the thing that I think is most important. So to do this, I want to first give, like, John and I are going to give a quick overview of the OGL situation, as you've probably heard it referred as. So I'm going to preface this all with I am certainly not a lawyer, and not just not a lawyer, I am not an intelligent man, and sometimes if I look at legalese court documents for too long, my eyes cross. So I cannot give you the intricacies of like U.S. copyright versus patent law and the intersectionality with other disciplines and contractual obligations. Like I ain't that guy. Yeah. The other day I put my shoes on the wrong way around, so I'm really not that guy. But what I can do is try to give like the 1,000-foot view situation. So in D&D, since I believe 98, but for quite a while now, it started in third. Actually, I can't.
Third edition.
Dungeons and Dragons, made by Wizards of the Coast, came out with a document called the OGL, which is short for Open Gaming License. And what this license did, in essence, was say that other people than them are allowed to use a lot of themes of their game to make homemade content for it, specifically for D&D. And you didn't have to pay them anything. You didn't have to like owe them royalties or licenses or anything like that. Rather, if you wanted to make a project, you could. Here are some guidelines you have to follow to get those. They were not very strict. And that led to a bloom of third-party resources that have been delightful. Like, full disclosure,
Yeah.
I have played D&D since 3rd edition, so like I feel strongly that this is great for the game. And I would argue that the metrics of D&D's rise also supports that it has been great for the game.
I would genuinely make an argument that Wizards made a big fumble with certain other editions after 3rd edition, that if not for the OGL, their game probably would have left the market entirely.
I don't know if it would have left entirely, but it may have been crippled. Like that, I fully agree with.
Yeah, it would not have came back in the way that it did.
So they made this document, and people started making third-party content. And we've gotten a ton of big names out of this. I mean, Pathfinder may be their like biggest competition in their direct sort of correlations between systems made off of this. Big shows like Critical Role or Dimension 20 also largely made off of this. It's why they're able to make their own source books and stuff and sell them to people. All of the various Kickstarters you've seen off of this. I mean, the source, like downstairs, I was just reading Grim Hollow, which is like a third-party dark gothic fantasy supplement made off the OGL. And these things have been cranking out at an incredible pace and at a wonderful quality for years. And it was one of those things that everyone has enjoyed and has been a rising tide that lifted all boats. And honestly, I don't think anyone ever thought about too deeply because we just thought, yeah, like it exists and people are going to keep using it.
Yeah, like this was a thing that felt similar to like the concept of rolling dice or like having a D20 in this game system. Like we never thought this would go away, or like the concept of levels or certain classes. Like it's to that degree. Like it's been married to this as a concept for over 2 decades, pushing 3.
Yeah. I mean, it's like also Legal has made a video about this. You can go watch. He's very, very more educated than me. Many more word gooder. But D&D is unique in how much community involvement there is in it. Because let's be honest, the whole game is centered around dungeon masters being extremely creative in making their own worlds, and it encourages you to have your own ideas and to flesh them out deeply for your players to explore. And it is not surprising that if that is the fundamental touchstone of the game, that people would take a bunch of their good ideas and put them into books.
Or use them to create content and shows and all sorts of other stuff that they themselves monetized from the like inspiration that they had from this initial thing.
Yeah. I mean, like when I was younger, the internet, the internet existed when I was younger, certainly, but in Kentucky, I barely had access to it. So we would like share scans of books around on like loose leaf paper, or we'd write them down in notebooks and hand them around. But so like this has been going on forever. Now it's just a bigger way to distribute them with people getting together. And that has been great. However, a story recently broke from Gizmodo that they had received a leaked document from Wizards of the Coast. They did, obviously, they're not going to name their source, but the keynote here is that they did independently verify that it, at least by all accounts, appears to be true and legit. At least they got this document from Wizards. And then they released it as journalists, and y'all, it has been a firestorm since, and much of it justifiedly, because this thing is horrific.
Yes.
So the big changes, there are a lot of them. This is 96 pages, y'all. Like, I am not reading this verbatim, but the big ones for me that really stick out are, one, they say that everything you make, they are going to get a royalty-free, for perpetuity license to all of your creations. So if you make a source book, they get it, and that they can use it as they see fit, which means they can just publish their own shit. Also, you have to send them notification about everything that you're making in the pipeline. Then more, if you're above a certain threshold, you have to report your financials to them. And if you're at a higher threshold, you owe them 25% royalties over 750,000.
And I think it's
20% if you're a Kickstarter.
I think it's important to know that that higher threshold doesn't even break 1 million. So, like, that is not a lot of money when running your entire like own company. Like, it's a lot of money, but that is a lot less than you'd think.
And it's gross. It's gross. It's not profit. It's gross.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, it's also gross because that like you were squeezing the life out of like small developers, but
yeah, I mean, like, even what makes that more horrific is that it is gross income, which is frigging damaging. And this would stranglehold the community. And very quickly, people started to share this around and share their opinions and got colossally angry and friggin' good. I also very not happy. It like they're cannibalizing their own community.
Like a comparison could be like, say GW managed to put out a license on any sort of like Warhammer adjacent game, like all like the 1-page rules, yada yada. What if they were able to just start demanding they pay them money?
25%.
Yeah. Like that's the allegory we're going for here. Like, what if GW got to look at other companies and go, you have to pay us money because you're playing with miniature games?
Yeah, it's terrible. It's real bad. And everyone said so vehemently. And like, since then the story has developed. Wizards have made a response. It was not a good one. To me, it feels very much so like a big corporation going, oh no, we're just a dumb big billion-dollar company. We don't know no things. That's our bad. We just have all these highfalutin, very educated, intelligent lawyers, and they did a big old oopsie for 96 pages. We did not mean it. Like, yeah, I'm sure you did not mean it.
Yeah.
And I quote, we rolled a 1. Like,
okay. We're trying to protect you from the NFTs. We're trying to protect you from the fascists. Like, no. You're trying to monetize me having fun with this thing that I've had since I was a child.
Like, don't spit in my mouth and tell me it's raining. Like, get out of here. Just get out of here.
Yeah, like, come on now.
We aren't this stupid. But, like, okay, so the response was even worse. And this itself, like, the actual reaction of everyone, like, almost burning it to the ground is great. You'll love to see it. You'll love to see companies being held accountable by their customers. But
do you love a good Twitter outrage? Can't confirm.
When it's justified, and that's rare, oh, buddy.
When the moon hits the sky and Twitter's alive. They fucked up now.
Yeah, a lot of people canceling subscriptions, and like, personally, like, just to know where I stand, because I feel like saying all of this without saying my personal opinion is bad. I'm done with D&D. Like, just pragmatically speaking, I don't think this is going to stop. I think they are going to backpedal on a few of the key sticking points while sliding in other slimy nonsense.
Well, they have enough money that they can just wait for this to cool down and then do it later quieter when the leak hasn't happened. Like,
yeah,
like this is on their mind. This is where it's going. I will not, like, the nicest way to say this is that if you support this, like, if you're with it, then that's your choice, but it's not good for me. Like, and obviously you've just said it's not good for you. And I think for the vast majority of players, it's toxic. Like, it's not for the players in mind. And I always will side with the players in these games, not the companies. So,
Well, and like the pressures that made them run in this direction have not gone away. I mean, in my opinion, I certainly don't have insider information. It appears that Hasbro is having a rough time and needs to increase their income. And as much this recently on their fireside chat. You can listen to the CEO say that she feels like D&D is under monetized. And if you're a Magic the Gathering player, you have seen where this goes. But the fact that there was a bunch of backlash doesn't mean the reason they tried to get all this extra money is gone. So I think it's going to happen again. So personally, I'm just walking away from D&D, which is a shame. You know, I've run a ton of games. I've brought dozens of people into D&D, which now tastes a little acrid. And I will just go play one of their many wonderful competitors because there's just an overwhelming amount of great games on the market. So like that's a whole thing. But what I think is important is to discuss why this should matter to us. Because I know there are some people like, yeah, like I don't play D&D. Although there may be like 8 people thinking that. Because let's be honest, most of us probably also play D&D at varying intervals.
Yeah, and like not just with the D&D thing, but like I mean, you were just talking, and while you're talking, it's clear like you're struggling to like get it out because you're worried what the backlash is going to be. But like the internet as a whole is a place where people love to fight.
God, they do.
It is a Thunderdome, and that doesn't mean that that's right. Like just because it is doesn't mean that that's what we should be doing as a community when it comes to talking about how hot and button stuff. And we can't change the community. We can't become community police, but there are things that we can do, like personally, especially in a community where we have to see each other face to face. Like if me and Joe get into a fight on the internet, we're gonna have to like sit across from a table each other and push these little plastic trays with Song and Ice Fire against each other.
Yeah, like yeah. It's different, you know. I feel like a lot of online communities are just that, expressly online, because you're not playing like League of Legends face to face in rolling dice. Like, but you play on the internet. If you're like a pro, you might play in person, but that's not how people play. So,
but
sure,
if you notice the pros in these games, like I'll use like World of Warcraft as another example, the pros that play in these games or on streams are very public facing. They tend to have a different perspective and are much less volatile for a reason.
Yeah. Rather than like you are playing against people who are just little avatars on a screen and you've dehumanized them, so like it's easier for folks to hurl terrible shit at them, and obscenities and whatnot. Same thing on comment threads or Reddit threads. Like I feel like the community is so spicy and disrespectful online. Because it's sort of anonymous and you're disconnected, and I highly doubt most of that would be said in person. But the thing is, we are an in-person community. And what I noticed and why I really wanted to make this episode was I had an interaction where it felt a little weird because it feels like there was some bleed over, and I hated it. So like I have been in a D&D game for a couple of years. That my buddy Josh has been running. It's been real fun. And in that group is a bud who I play with, who I think actually listens to the show. So if you're listening, hey, what's up? I'm not going to drop names or anything because it could be weird. But obviously, we got together yesterday morning for our D&D game that has, you know, we've scheduled out for the whole year. And obviously, we get together in person to play D&D. After the OGL stuff has happened, we're going to talk about the OGL.
Ooh, hey, it's on them like tea conversations.
Oh, yeah. Like, you have to talk about it. It's unavoidable.
Yeah.
And, like, Josh and I were talking, and it was fine. And, like, Josh and I, largely the same opinion, though, so of course it feels easy. But Bud at the table is not pro D&D, but just a little hesitant. You know, has not been a part of it from the start, does not know all the ins and outs, and is also, much like me, fully aware that they are not a contract lawyer. So some of that is a little hard to understand. And in asking about it, it was essentially, there's some, there is incentive to lie on both sides of this thing if you are competition to rile the drum and make this look worse than it is, or if you're D&D to underplay it. And essentially, it made them a little uncomfortable on where exactly to fall. And that's not a terrible opinion at all. Certainly, skepticism is good, and we should have it. But the thing that struck me weird is I could feel like when I talk to people, like I could really feel when stuff changes a little bit. That's probably a trauma response. But it was almost like I could feel their nerves. Like they were almost nervous to say that opinion over like a couple of minute conversation. And I cannot say for sure where that's from. But I suspect it's because that opinion online would get you burned at the stake, even though it's a fairly reasonable one. And I don't know, like, if he thought I would be mad or spicy or whatever, but, I mean, obviously I was not. I just asked clarifying questions and led with some damn empathy, because I don't think it's unreasonable. And simply asked, okay, well, like, if you're unsure about the leak, that's fair, but, like, what burden of proof would work for you? It's an old trick with talking about politics in Kentucky. Like, if journalists independently verifying it isn't enough, like, what thing would meet your burden of proof to where you would think that leaked document was a draft?
Yeah, like, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm trying to understand where your level of, like, validation is. Like, what do you view as valid? What do you not view as... What do you view as invalid, kind of thing?
Yeah. I think it's important to just get some clarity on where somebody is coming from. And it helps to have a more productive conversation if you know where they stand. And like, he responded that, I didn't know that they were like journalists who released it and independently verified it. Like, that does change things. And like, it was that easy, y'all. Instead of being spicy, calling him a cucklord or whatever on Facebook. Like, I asked a reasonable question to a reasonable human being because he is a member of the community, and treated him with kindness. And what do you know? He learned something, and he did bring up some good points that certainly there could be profit in it. I don't think that's necessarily why this got so bad, but sure, it's worth noting. It's not one of those things I really didn't stop to think about implicitly, so that's cool. But the fact that someone had to be nervous to share what is a reasonable opinion on a hot button topic is just sad. It's just sad.
It's also that if you look at why he didn't believe it at first, is that it's clear he kind of didn't believe it because he's like, oh, it's more like torches and pitchforks on the internet thing, right? Which
Probably
happens
some of that.
all the time. Mm-hmm. But if you compare, like, as soon as you were like journalist, it becomes a little bit more real. That journalist bit probably got buried underneath the like 17 videos and 400,000 tweets and the 2 podcasts by a chucklefucks who are talking about the OGL in a way that like doesn't really add too much to the conversation.
But yeah, like, he is not gonna know every bit of it. You cannot, especially if you're a human being working a full-time job. Like, if you're not perpetually online, and if you are not a lawyer or a journalist, like, you cannot be expected to know every aspect of this.
Who's like the journalist? It's their job to learn a bunch of this. Like, that's kind of the whole point. And that level of like fear to have a conversation in a shared community space is very, very unsettling. In a world that is consistently becoming more and more attached to the internet and its peripherals. For those who haven't seen CES, like, the amount of stuff being attached to like cameras that are attached to your Amazon account is wild. It's scary, right? Like, you have a bunch of people who feel scared to talk because people on the internet want to attack other people who probably have the same side as them.
Yes. Yeah. I cannot speak to for sure where the nerves were coming from, but it's probably part of it. And I'm sure also, like, he didn't know how I was going to react. Thankfully, not spicily, but, I certainly could have been a turd, which would have made his nerves justified. And, like, yeah, it's a thing. But sometimes you can just pick up when the tone changes, and it did. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, and it's normal to want to talk about stuff, right? Like it's normal to want to communicate in person and also online because it's kind of another place to communicate. And everyone has to have a take. Everyone has to have like a thing to say about it because that's a normal human thing. Just how you give that to people matters. Right? If the only time people are going to interact with you about a topic is like yelling matches, it's not good. A good example I'll give is like there's a World Eaters Facebook group that is some of the least spicy place I've been on the internet. Huge
Which
fan.
is so ironic.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of dudes going, "Oh, I really like my Terminators I built. They're like super cool. I put these blood work on them. How do I use them in game?" And there's just like 12 dudes will pull up a chair and be like, "Let me explain to you how I like to use them. This might work for you." And it's just very nice, cordial men talking about bringing very angry lads. And occasionally a lady will pop in and go, "I've put female heads on my Terminators." And one dude will get mad and get kicked. Like, it's great. And the reason that is so good is because of a heavy sense of community moderation, not just from the moderators, but everyone contributes to the collective social contract of we are here to talk about these fun models we have and how we've modeled them and why they're fun for us and how we can use them better to have fun in the game. And that's how it stays because everyone collectively shuns people who are not part of that collective contract. If you if you push against that and make people uncomfortable, you will be ostracized. And that became very clear. Some people might think that's bad. I think that's probably for the best. In an online space, like we don't need to have like we don't have to accept shitty like behavior and communication. You can have patience for the 45 seconds you're typing a response to somebody on the internet. It's okay. Or you can just ignore it. Like, if you can't say something okay, you can just not say anything.
Mm-hmm.
Because what people hear on the internet or, like, read on the internet, they're going to take into real life. Like you experienced, Joe.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I exactly want to touch on, is that, like, the way we engage with people online bleeds into our real-life engagement. And that matters a lot for us as tabletop wargamers, because let's be honest, like, while Tabletop Simulator exists, most people play in person. Vast majority of us. You get together at your local shop or at somebody's house, and you have your little game group, and you're gonna talk in person. And it's gonna bleed there, and God forbid you have a terrible interaction there. It's gonna be even worse. So, the next time you see a spicy thing out there, what I would encourage you is this. Like, the next time Magic the Gathering releases 30th Anniversary Edition for like $1,000 packs, or the next time Games Workshop starts trying to attack content creators and animations, still mad about it.
Don't worry, new horrors will come. They're arriving soon.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain. Like, just like the sun will rise, something will happen. But when these things happen, and you are talking to community members about them, lead with some empathy and ask clarifying questions rather than exploding on people to try to dunk on them for internet points. If we can try to understand folks who don't 100% agree with you, we can maybe learn some stuff and grow as a group. But at the least, even if we don't, at least we weren't dicks about it.
Yeah, and like a good point is that most human beings have things in common, right? Like random people you see out in real life, you have probably more in common than you realize. So when you're in a community of like shared interests, you have even more in common than you realize. So you can probably find some sort of like middle ground to have a decent conversation that might actually change some minds or help educate someone to make a better decision for themselves in a like tangible way that you wouldn't have if you didn't have that shared interest. But if you just walk up to him and dunk on him, kick him in the nads, just say eat shit turd, and then walk away, they're just gonna be more mad and pushed away. Like,
Well, and even if you do it online and you get like a couple of upvotes, like y'all, when you go to bed, you're still gonna be an asshole. Like it's not gonna give you anything.
upvotes don't like help feed you if everything falls apart. Like,
It just doesn't, man. It just doesn't.
like upvotes was what that old quote. Sure, he reads theory, but does he do the dishes? It's like the modern rendition of that. Like, sure, you got upvotes, but did you get to play a game of Warhammer?
Was everyone coincidentally busy when you ask who wants to play? Yeah, it's a thing. And that's really the point I wanted to end this on, because I like, rather than just being mad on the internet, if I really want to hammer that point home, and I hope it resonates for people. For there are like, I don't know, 50 to 80 people a week who watch the show, I think, right now. And for people out there, I hope this reaches a few of you, and the next time that a spicy thing happens, you at least take a second and think about it.
And I'm gonna piggyback off you real quick, Joe, and just say that like, if you are currently a person who is on the internet that gets real mad and gets like says some real mean shit to people, you can just choose to not do that. And I can say that as a person who has done that for a long time and then at some point made the decision, go, you know what? This is not helping me enjoy the game. This is not helping me enjoy my interactions with people. This is actively making playing and enjoying this interest and this hobby harder. So I had to like take it on back and learn how to like communicate again with people, because I was doing it in a toxic way that was ruining my fun too. Not just, hurting other people. This is not just coming from like on a high horse trying to tell you like how you should talk to people. I genuinely care about people enjoying the hobby and having a good time. And you can change how you talk to people. Coming from a shit heel himself, you can improve. And I think that it's important to genuinely think about that.
It's worth doing, especially, for a community that's this niche. It's made by us for us. Let's keep it nice. Yeah, like this was a weird episode topic, but I hope it hits well. And if you have any further thoughts or questions surrounding this, because I know it's kind of nuanced, please feel free to reach out to us. The social medias are open, as they always are. We are more than happy to take questions or to answer more. Or if you have other topics you want us to touch on, please send them our way. We always look forward to adding new ones to the roster.
And if you want a House Martell faction focus, bully Joe on Instagram and Twitter.
No,
and
don't bully
else.
me. It's very effective. That's why I'm looking at Imperial Knights in my display case. Damn it. I'm going to probably end up having to paint spears. Damn you, John.
Already working.
So now that's been all of our opinions. Bonafide, Kentucky Fried. We'll see y'all on the next one.